A few months back in June, I made a video called The Mystery Behind the Clickbait Solved. And from that time till now, it has gathered almost 800,000 views and has sparked a lot of great discussion. Despite the fact that I've been creating content on YouTube for over 2 years, it is this video that in my opinion started my channel. With that has come a special sort of relationship between me and this stranger. I don't quite remember the psychological term that goes along with it. My AP Psych teacher got arrested halfway through the year when I took that class, but yeah, I'm being serious. But that video really changed the way I looked at the stranger as a character, as she now represents not only the recent increase in popularity of my channel, but also what I find wrong with Destiny's way of storytelling. So despite how probable this is of actually happening, I decided I'd talk about the stranger one last time. Over the past few weeks, I and others have been making videos on characters such as Callus, the Nine, Osiris, Uldren, Eris, and others. And if you take a step back and analyze this, you'll find a consistent underlying theme. When you look at all of these characters together as one, the stranger included, it's pretty easy to decipher what all of the ambiguity means. Since I've already covered all of them in separate videos, I'm not going to get super specific on each and every single one of them. But for those that have no idea what I'm talking about, let me explain. I've got time, okay? Don't worry. This started for me when looking at Callus. While explaining the ending to the Leviathan raid, I came to the conclusion that Callus designed the raid to be one big test or game for Guardians to prove their strength in. There was no way of knowing definitively whether his intentions were good or evil, but I believed, and by looking at the comments I think a lot of you believed as well, that his desire for camaraderie has something to do with the triangular ships we see at the end of Destiny 2's campaign. So, for now, we put Callus in a gray area between the light and the darkness, and it is this gray area that has become the reoccurring theme here. When we looked at the Nine, it was the same thing. Recruitment, somewhere in between the light and darkness. Osiris, recruitment, somewhere in between the light and darkness. The Awoken, once again, somewhere in between the light and darkness. And if we look at other characters, Eris Morn leaving the tower to go after the Hive, Uldren Sov gaining control over the House of Kings, all of this and more foreshadow a big battle, and if I'm a betting man, I'd say it has everything to do with these ships. So now let's take some time to look at these tetrahedral figures. Who or what are they? What do they want? I've seen many comments in my video on it tossing out a multitude of different ideas, but frankly, I feel like this one is pretty easy to figure out. These ships don't belong to any race we've seen before. I know there's people out there that will disagree with me, but even with that being said, after I show you all of this evidence pointing towards a fifth race, I don't see how you could refute. The first thing worth noting is this concept art clearly showing from left to right the Vex, Fallen, Cabal, Hive, and now another race we haven't yet seen being shown with triangles. And while that piece of art is old, there are much more recent examples coming from Destiny 2 itself, which references these ships twice in its campaign. But just because many people call these ships the Darkness, that doesn't mean that this is what their name actually is. While I strongly believe these ships belong to a new enemy, I don't think that they belong to the Darkness as we know it. I find it far more likely that the Darkness is simply a source of power, not a physical being. Think of it this way. Guardians are called Guardians. They are not called the Light. They wield the light and they draw their power from it, but they themselves are not physical light, nor are they referred to as light. I feel like the darkness works in similar ways. Whatever this new enemy is, they are simply wielders of the darkness, a different type of power. The tetrahedral ships we see in Destiny are referred to as the Traveler's Ancient Enemy, not specifically the Darkness. A while ago now, Luke Smith spoke of how Bungie is removing the term darkness from Destiny, and I feel like this is what he meant. In Destiny 1, I feel like the darkness was supposed to be its own race, but looking at them now in a physical form, I feel like Bungie has given this race an actual name and is instead making them use the power of the darkness for evil purposes, similar to the Vex, Hive, and Taken. So now with all of that being said, who specifically could be the Traveler's Ancient Enemy? And what does any of it have to do with the stranger and the characters I mentioned before? They honestly could be anything. Looking at how Bungie tells their by-the-numbers story, I can't help but feel like it will just be some other reskin. But since this video is considered theory, this is personally what I hope it would be. It's no secret that this new enemy seems to be the inverse of the Traveler and its light. Darkness is the opposite of light, and a tetrahedral in many ways is the opposite to a sphere. And when looking at the Grimoire card titled The Darkness, one of the theories for what the darkness is includes this. The darkness is a necessary symmetry to the Traveler in a cosmic balance. So if we were going off of opposites, the potential for this new race becomes oh so cool. Throughout the grimoire, there are numerous examples of dark guardians, guardians that have fallen away from the light in his search for darkness. Very reminiscent to the story of Lucifer, if you ask me. There are some broad examples I'll get into, but some specific characters to note include Osiris, Tolan the Shattered, and Dredgen Yor. All three of these characters in their own way have left the city in the search for a greater knowledge of the darkness. This doesn't mean that they're necessarily evil, but it does put them in this gray area as we talked about before. The biggest example for dark guardians comes from the grimoire card The Black Garden, with a story about a guardian named Pujari. At the end of the path grew a flower in the shape of a ghost. I reached out to pluck it and it cut me with a thorn. I bled and the blood was light. The ghost said to me, "You are a dead thing made by a dead power in the shape of the dead. All you will ever do is kill. You do not belong here. This is a place of life." "The traveler is life," I said. "You are a creature of darkness. You see to deceive me." But I looked behind me, down the long slope where the blossoms tumbled in the warm wind and the great trees wept sap like blood or wine, and I felt doubt. These examples not only confirmed me that the darkness is a power to be wielded, but it also speaks volumes for an opposing race of guardians. If there's guardians wielding the light, then having an inverse wielding the darkness just makes sense. And this brings everything back to the stranger from Destiny 1. She too tries to recruit you. She's someone who has powers we have never seen. She says she was not forged in light, and she also says this:
"A side should always be taken, little light. Even if it's the wrong side."
When looking at all of these examples, it places her in the category of the others. Recruitment, somewhere in between the light and darkness. Perhaps this was her plan all along, we just didn't know it. The stranger also refers to the traveler in Destiny 1 as your traveler. If she too is one of these dark guardians, does that mean that they have their own traveler emitting darkness? With this theory comes a lot of questions. If the stranger was trying to recruit you, much like Callus in the Leviathan raid, what would her purpose be? This would have giant repercussions if true, but perhaps the traveler itself is not as good as we think. We're going pretty deep down the theory hole, so feel free to believe as much or as little of this video as you'd like. The catalyst I found on the traveler comes once again from the grimoire card on the darkness. It says, "The traveler itself triggered the collapse," or that it knew the darkness was coming for it and hoped to use the solar system as a sacrifice or a proxy army. Now in the card it states that this to many is heretical speculation, but I think its mere mentioning can be significant. Whenever someone goes against the traveler, Osiris for example, trying to learn more about the darkness, they are exiled, never to be seen again. Is there a more sinister reason behind this? The speaker is presumably dead, so we may never know, but perhaps this was an attempt to keep Osiris away from learning something the traveler didn't want him to find out. Or perhaps it was done in a way to limit the number of guardians metaphorically turning to the dark side. With two different sides of guardians, it creates a lot of possibilities. First of all, this could potentially lead up to a big war in a Taken King size expansion, or my personal guess, Destiny 3. With all of these threads, we could place a lot of these characters on different sides, the light or the darkness. Bungie can make it to be a large war involving all enemy races with the likes of Callus's Cabal and Uldren's Fallen on the side of the light, and then have the likes of the Hive, Taken, Vex, and Dark Guardians on the other. The alternate option could be even cooler for some people, too ballsy for Bungie to actually do, but I'll mention it anyway. What if the lines between good and evil were blurred, and instead you were given the choice when creating your guardian to choose to wield the light or the darkness? You could create different subclasses and social spaces with their own unique vendors for each. You could have faction wars that aren't pointless. I don't know if everyone would enjoy it or if it would fit Bungie's vision for Destiny. I feel like at this point they're like my abusive girlfriend who you try to separate yourself from because you know that there's better girls out there, but then just when you're about to leave for good, she snaps you a pic of them tick bitties and, well, I don't think I need to explain myself any further. But despite how you feel about it, this in my opinion would at least actually allow you to make your decisions and create your legend. You know, the thing it says on the box. But whichever way you cut it, guys, the ancient enemy of the Traveler is coming in the foreseeable future, and it looks like everyone is going to pick a side and get in on the action. Maybe even the infamous Exo Stranger from Destiny 1, who in my opinion, got all of this started. So let me know, who's good and who's bad? What are the beings on the triangular ships? Dark Guardians, the darkness in a physical form, or something else? Leave your responses down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, if you could please leave a like. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.